Okay, we're joined in the studio by an expert to share his insights on last evening's National Day rally. Eugene Tan is an associate professor at Singapore Management University and no stranger to us here at Singapore Tonight. Eugene, good to have you with us.
Thank you.
So you're watching at home last night, I understand. Give us your sort of assessment or your hot take.
Well, Steve, PM was cautiously upbeat. Whether he was dealing with, the existential issue of climate change. I think he was trying to demonstrate that the government has a good handle of the issues, right? So whether the economy is slowing down, there wasn't a need for them to engage in any stimulus measures at this point in time, but you assured Singaporeans that they were also prepared to do that. So you had a whole series of weighty issues, climate change,
US-China trade.
US-China trade, how Singaporeans should respond to that, retirement, re-employment ages. So I think there was enough topics, that would provide food for thought for different Singaporeans from different age groups. And I think overall, it left Singaporeans on a fairly upbeat mood, notwithstanding the economic uncertainty that seems to be engulfing the world.
Eugene, the Prime Minister announced new initiatives we heard last night. We saw him talk in great detail about education affordability as well as supporting older workers. Do you see an emphasis on helping the sandwiched class of Singaporeans? And what conclusions do you draw from the policy changes, the anticipated ones?
Yes, I think certainly when you look at the announcements on policy with regard to preschool education as well as tertiary level education, the whole idea of making them more affordable, more accessible, I think certainly, it is really looking at the broad middle class. And I think there is the appreciation now that it is not only important to have equal opportunities, but equally important or even more important is the need for Singaporeans to be able to access those opportunities, right? So you can have those opportunities, but if people are handicapped in some way, then, the equal opportunities wouldn't really mean much. And so in that regard, I think that the preschool education announcement, affordability, accessibility, as well as raising the quality, providing it on par with public housing and healthcare, where 80% would have access, to government-supported preschool education. I think that's going to help, every Singaporean, to have the head start that they deserve to ensure that no one's going to be left behind. So I think when you look at these policies that they have been announced, I think they do point to the recognition that these are not just expenditures, but they are really social investments for the future.
Now, speaking of the future, not just education, but for employees, for older workers, as well as climate change, everything seems to take a very sort of long-term view. How should we read into that?
Well, I think this is where Prime Minister was trying to showcase the government in its element, right? So the ability to look not just 3-5 years ahead, but perhaps even over the horizon. And I thought climate change was one where he demonstrated that the government, is prepared to deal with the changes, over a 50 to 100-year period. And I think it's important, right? So we are generally a low-lying country, and you can't prepare for higher sea levels overnight. And so the preparation must start now. And so he likened that to our military defense, where you have constant investments over the years, but also having that nimbleness, trying to use the best of technology and not let, these challenges become opportunities as well. So I thought, that was something which, should inspire a fair amount of confidence, that despair is not on the agenda, but instead, we should be brimming with confidence, that we will be on top of these sort of matters.
Eugene, every year we anticipate that the rally will have within it an idea of policy change. But in his Malay and his Mandarin speeches this time around, we saw the PM spend a fair amount of time talking about, Singapore's identity, the past. It's intangible. Why do you think he spent that amount of time on those topics?
Dawn, when we look at independence, right, we talk about Singapore's sovereignty, it's really that covenant, if I can put it that way, the past, the present, and the future. And so, he described, for example, how, the Malay community, the Chinese community, how they have, developed their own unique identities, but all under this overarching national identity. So in many ways, the tagline of the bicentennial commemoration, from Singapore to Singaporeans. And I thought it was important to emphasize that, because I think even as we become more confident about who we are as a nation, we sometimes forget, of the importance of the overarching national identity, and so we tend to slip into these ethnic identities. And so it was in that context that he spoke about the Muslims having to practice their faith, cognizant of multiracialism, and the fact that we are not, an Islamic country, or for the Chinese, with regard to how they might deal with, the US-Sino rivalry, that in the end, Singaporeans must remember that our policies must be based on what is our national interest rather than pools of ethnicity. So it is a timely reminder.
Oh, thanks so much, Eugene, for coming in and helping us, or giving us your take on it. Eugene Tan, Associate Professor at Singapore Management University.